Hello, everyone, and welcome to Slash Film Daily for July 11th, 2018. On today's episode, we're going to be talking about the latest film and television news. My name is Ben Pearson. I'm the senior writer at slashfilm.com, and I am joined on today's episode by writer Chris Evangelista.
Hello.
Chris, how's it going?
All right, how are you?
I am doing great, thanks. So let's just go ahead and jump into the news today. First up, a new RoboCop movie is on the way. Tell us about this.
Yes. So for some reason, they're gonna try and make RoboCop again. There was a 2014 remake of the original Paul Verhoeven film, and it was not very good. And now MGM is going back to the drawing board in a way with the original film's writer is Ed Neumeyer and Michael Miner. I perhaps pronounced their names wrong. If so, I'm sorry. They wrote the original film, and they wrote the original script for this film, which is now going to be rewritten by Justin Rhodes, who wrote the upcoming Terminator film. So Justin Rhodes is carving a name out for himself as a guy who writes robot movies. But the big piece of news here is that Neill Blomkamp, the director of District 9 and Chappie, is going to helm the film. And that's the thing that sort of gives me pause here. Neil Blomkamp, his career started out really well because District 9 is a very good film, and in my opinion, everything he's made since then has been not very good. He's got a okay visual style. His films look good, but the stories leave a lot to be desired. So, with that said, if this film has a good script, he might be able to pull it off. And what they're doing here is, instead of just doing a straight up reboot, this film is going to be a sequel of sorts to the first film. It's kind of similar to what they're doing with the new Halloween, where it's both a reboot and also a sequel to the original.
So Newmeyer and Miner, you said they wrote the original draft of this. Did they write the original draft like in the 90s or the 80s, like after the right after the original RoboCop came out, in with the plans of making that sequel then, and it just never happened?
It wasn't that soon, but they have been sitting on this script for a while, and I guess MGM thought now was the time to do it.
Interesting. Okay. Well, yeah. I mean, I'm like right there with you in terms of Neil Blomkamp and his filmography. I think District 9 is really great, and it's been like really decreasing returns ever since. But I know that Peter Soretta, the editor in chief of Slash Film, he was talking about at least Blomkamp will be able to make RoboCop look cool, and that's definitely one thing that he has the ability to do. He's always been really great in terms of design. Like even Elysium, a movie that I don't really like very much at all, has a lot of really cool looking shots in it. Like you were saying, his movies look good, and I feel like all of the production design that he and his team do really craft these worlds that feel lived in. So maybe, yeah, you're right. I think if there's a good script there, that seems to be the thing that he has been lacking over the past, I don't know, what is it, 10 years almost since District 9 came out. So yeah, I guess we'll just have to hope that this script is up to snuff. I guess one thing I wanted to mention very briefly, this is not like a major story that we need to talk about because we're not even sure what the full effects of it are, but I did want to mention it really quick, is a Fox shareholder has sued to stop Disney's acquisition of Fox. I know we've talked a lot about the Disney Fox acquisition and the deal and all of that stuff on this podcast. We've sort of been monitoring the progress of that as it's been going along. And we wrote an article today that a shareholder named Robert Weiss filed a complaint in Delaware federal court on Friday, alleging that the prospectus from Fox was incomplete, basically saying that it omits or misrepresents certain information, I guess mostly pertaining to Goldman Sachs, who like advised Fox on the merger, and there's some sort of potential conflicts of interest going on there. There's like some financial projections for Fox's stake in Hulu that weren't detailed in this prospectus plan that was supposed to be sent out to the shareholders and the Securities and Exchange Commission. A lot of this sounds like stuff that's over my head, to be honest with you, but because I'm not full on, fully versed in like the ins and outs of massive corporate business deals, but it sounds like this could potentially be a speed bump for Disney and Fox. I think the studio called it quote frivolous, but people people have have said a lot worse things about lawsuits that ended up moving forward. So I'm not sure what that is, but I just wanted to throw that out there in case we come back in a couple days and talk about, oh wow, the whole thing's off now. This could be a good sign for Comcast, who's also vying for the acquisition of Fox. So we'll have to see how that plays out. Chris, let's move on to our next story, and that is that the Joaquin Phoenix Joker movie is apparently actually happening for real 100% now. Is that right?
Yes, it is. We've more or less known for a few months now that this film was in the works at Warner Brothers, and the rumor was that Joaquin Phoenix was going to star. And for months and weeks now, we've been getting articles that have been sort of confirming he's doing it, but nothing has been officially announced. But now it is official. He's officially signed a contract, and Joaquin Phoenix will play the Joker in a standalone Joker movie for Todd Phillips, the director of The Hangover and other films. And I really don't know what to make of this because Joaquin Phoenix, great actor. I actually think he might be the best actor working right now, the best male actor at least. And so that is promising to see him lead a film like that. That has promise, but we don't really need a standalone Joker movie. And also the rumor is this is going to be an origin story, and I really hate that because the Joker always works better, at least in my opinion, as a mystery. One of the things that made the Joker so cool in The Dark Knight was that we knew nothing about him. He was just this enigma. Mm-hmm. And to show his origin, and they've mentioned they might draw on Alan Moore's The Killing Joke. That just seems really boring to me. I mean, I feel like The Killing Joke has been done to death. We don't need to keep going back to that well. Tell something new. And I'm also not really ecstatic about Todd Phillips directing this. If this was a different director, I might be more thrilled. But as of now, I'm sort of on the fence.
I'm so curious about this movie, in a train wreck sort of way. I think all of these pieces sound so incongruous to me. I cannot fathom that Joaquin Phoenix would look at this and think it was a good idea to play the Joker in an origin story. As you mentioned, I think in your article, that he came very close to playing Doctor Strange for Marvel, and he didn't want to be a part of that movie making machine because he thought he was going to get signed to multiple movies and stuff. One has to assume then that this is just going to be a one and done kind of thing, an in and out one time Joker portrayal for Joaquin Phoenix, which I'm guessing is probably pretty attractive to him from an acting perspective. He doesn't have to get locked down into multiple movies and all that. But if they're also making another Joker movie with Jared Leto, it just I guess I'm as baffled now as I ever have been by any of the news about this thing.
It's very weird, and I feel like this is going to backfire because this is what's going to happen. They're going to make this movie, and it might be good, and at the very least, Joaquin Phoenix is going to be phenomenal. He's going to, be the best Joker we've seen since Heath Ledger. Mm-hmm. But then they're just going to go ahead and make more Joker movies with Jared Leto, and everyone's going to be furious because no one's going to want that. They're going to be like, oh, great, we had this great Joker, and now we're back to Jared Leto. It's going to backfire so badly.
Yeah, we'll have to see about that. And the Todd Phillips does not strike me as the right person for this job, but maybe he has a take that is interesting, and maybe all of this could come together. And Martin Scorsese is executive producing this thing, so I have to just, as ridiculous as it all sounds on its face, I have to believe that there's something more to this that has drawn all of these people together, and I just hope it coheres into something that is at least entertaining and memorable, if not outright great at the end. So we'll definitely keep you guys posted when more casting news starts rolling in for that. How long until Rooney Mara has cast his Harley Quinn in that version? Yeah. That
just seems inevitable, and it should happen. So make it happen, Warner Brothers.
Yeah, you might as well go all in. Get ridiculous with it. Okay, so let's move on to our next story, and that is Black Panther's Chadwick Boseman is producing in and starring in a new action movie called 17 Bridges that is going to be produced by the Russo brothers, Joe and Anthony Russo, who directed him in Captain America Civil War, and also what is it? Avengers Infinity War, the one that just came out. Boseman, of course, plays Black Panther in the Marvel movies, and this 17 Bridges movie follows a disgraced NYPD detective who, after being thrust into a citywide manhunt for a cop killer, is given a shot at redemption. This movie is going to be directed by Brian Kirk, who's probably best known for directing the first couple episodes of the Idris Elba detective show Luther, and Brian Kirk also directed a couple episodes, I think maybe 3 or 4 episodes actually, of the first season of Game of Thrones. I I really like Chadwick Boseman as a performer, but I feel like Black Panther is not the best character that really shows range for him. Like, I feel like he sort of got lost in his own solo movie. Do you agree with that, Chris, or do you think he was more of a standout performer than I do?
No, I agree. I mean, he's a good actor, but Black Panther, that supporting cast it's like wall to wall great actors. So it's true. He did kind of get lost in the shuffle, although he did really stand out in Civil War. I thought he was like one of the highlights of that film. But one thing I like about this is I like that he's doing something else. I feel like a lot of Marvel actors, they kind of stay with Marvel. Like Robert Downey Jr. hasn't really done anything. He did like The Judge, which was a terrible movie, and beyond that, he's really only done Marvel movies. And the same for like Chris Evans and all these actors. Like I like the idea that he's gonna do other things, because I feel like too often these actors get trapped in the Marvel zone.
Yeah, and I don't want to disparage Chadwick Boseman as a performer, but I just think maybe it's like you were saying, the supporting casts that he's been in the Avengers films and especially Black Panther, like they're so great that I wonder if he sort of gets overshadowed just by the people around him, or if it's the character of T'Challa, who is, at least in Black Panther and Infinity War, sort of like a calm, even-handed voice of reason almost in a crazy kind of world. I think maybe the reason, or I don't want to speak for you, but maybe the reason he worked a little bit better for you in Civil War is because he is like on a mission. He's got like a little bit of vengeance at play, and he has like some fire in him, and he seems a little bit more subdued in the other films that we've seen thus far. I don't know.
No, yeah, I agree with that. I mean, in Infinity War, he had pretty much nothing to do. I was actually really surprised because, all the marketing played him up in the movie because Black Panther was such a big hit. But I feel like he's in Infinity War for like 5 minutes. So, yeah.
Yeah, you're probably right. I want somebody to do a full clock on that. I think there was like an infographic that was floating around like while the movie was in theaters, but I want somebody to get it on a home video and actually like bust out a stopwatch and do some real timing breakdowns for those characters. So our next story also involves a Disney product, or I guess a bunch of different Disney properties. Indiana Jones 5 has moved its release date, and Disney has locked down several other releases. Chris, give us the update.
So word broke a little while ago, a few weeks ago, that David Coep, who was originally writing the Indiana Jones 5 script, was being more or less replaced by Jonathan Kasdan. And at the time, we weren't sure if Jonathan Kasdan was doing like a brief rewrite, if he was just doing a polish, but almost immediately after that news then came that the film was going to miss its 2020 release date, which means Jonathan Kasdan is doing a big rewrite on this, probably writing it from scratch from the start. And now it is a new official release date, and that is July 9th, 2021, which sounds so futuristic, I can't even believe it. And Harrison Ford will be 79 years old when they're doing this. So when that film comes out, so it's going to be wild. I don't know.
Yeah, that's I can't believe that they're pushing it this late, because I think originally it was supposed to come out in 2019, right?
Yeah, I believe that's true. And then they've, Spielberg is always working on something. So he's also doing West Side Story, which is due out in 2020. So that'll be in between, I guess.
Okay, so what other Disney projects were sort of shuffled around in this whole thing?
Maleficent 2 got a new release date. That's May 29th, 2020. The Rock movie Jungle Cruise, it will hit theaters October 11th, 2019. Mary Poppins Returns was supposed to come out on Christmas Day, and they moved that back to December 19th. There's also a untitled Marvel movie. This, of course, could be anything. This was supposed to come out, whatever it is, on July 30th, 2021, but it's now been moved to February 12th, 2021. And the move from July to February has many people, us included, surmising that this might be Black Panther 2, because Black Panther came out in February of this year and it was a huge hit. And Disney and Marvel could be saying, let's make February, the Black Panther month. Let's let it own that month.
But Chris, I don't understand. After what happened at the end of Avengers: Infinity War, how can that be?
Oh, I don't know. Well, I'm guessing it's a prequel. That's all the future Marvel movies are prequels.
And then there was also a title change in this whole thing, right?
Yes, Wreck-It Ralph 2. It originally had the very clunky title Ralph Breaks the Internet. Wreck-It Ralph 2 is now just called Ralph Breaks the Internet. So they got rid of the Wreck-It Ralph 2 part.
I feel like they should have just gone with Wreck-It Ralph 2 instead of Ralph Breaks the Internet, right? Like, what?
Yes.
Somebody in the Disney offices was just like, all right, this title's too clunky, just chop half of it off, you know what to do. And some assistant's like, yep, I know exactly what to do. And sent out the press release, and they were like, what are you doing? It's the wrong half.
Yes, so there you have it.
Great stuff. All right, so moving from Marvel over to DC, the movie Shazam is in the works. This one I'm actually kind of a little bit more excited about than a lot of the other DC Comics adaptations that are in the works, because it just seems very light and fluffy and sort of ridiculous, but like bright and embracing the cheery tones that the DC movie universe so often does not embrace. Zachary Levi stars as the title hero Shazam, and the casting news that I wanted to talk about today is that we just found out that Djimon Hounsou, the actor who actually was in a Marvel movie, he played Korath in Guardians of the Galaxy, the guy who's hunting down Chris Pratt's Star-Lord character. Djimon Hounsou is now part of the Shazam cast. He's playing a 3,000-year-old sorcerer from ancient Egypt who uses his powers to fight evil and has been seeking a successor to carry on his mission. His character's name is the Wizard, and he ends up giving his powers to a young child named Billy Batson, who's played by an actor named Asher Angel, who that character turns into the fully grown adult superhero called Shazam. So that's the basic premise of this movie. We're not entirely certain how big Djimon Hounsou's role is going to be in this, but it's interesting because this role was previously reported to belong to a guy named Ron Cephas Jones. I think that's how you pronounce his name. He is on the NBC sitcom This Is Us, which everybody loves, but I've never seen, so I can't really speak to his acting abilities, because that's the only thing that I think he's like most prominently known for right now. But
he's also on Luke Cage too.
Oh, okay, yeah, man, I have missed most of the Marvel shows. So have you watched Luke Cage? I know you often review a lot of those Netflix Marvel shows.
Yeah, I watched both season 1 and 2, and it's all right. It's like every Marvel Netflix show, it's like 5 episodes too long.
Yeah. So I guess that casting, although seemingly official at the time, ended up falling apart, and now Djimon Hounsou has stepped into that role. Shazam is already the production of the movie is already done, so they're going into post-production right now, and that film comes out on April 5th, 2019. So basically it's just one more name added to the trivia section that'll probably pop up in bars across the country of the number of actors who have had roles in both the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the DC extended universe, or whatever the hell they're calling that movie universe these days. So before we get into our feature presentation, I wanted to mention one more bit of casting news, and that is that the Y the Last Man FX series has announced its cast. So Y the Last Man is a comic book that launched in 2002. Brian K. Vaughan wrote it, and I think it's Pia Guerra is how you pronounce her name, is the artist. And it's a really fantastic comic series. Chris, I know you have not read this, right?
I have not. I've always heard good things about it. It's one of those things I've always wanted to get around to. I just never have.
Yeah, and I know that you read comics occasionally, and I would highly, highly recommend adding this to the top of your list because it's one of those things that's like I guess sort of like Preacher. It always I sort of put the two in my mind because they came out within the same like I don't know era of the popularity of graphic novels were really taking off in like the late 90s, early 2000s, and Why the Last Man is it's such a cool concept, and it's like a high concept premise, which is the main character, his name is Yorick Brown, discovers that he is like after a plague suddenly decimates most of Earth's population. He realizes that he's like the last human male on Earth, and it's just women who are taking over, who have been left alive basically. So they have to sort of rebuild the world in the ashes of this cataclysmic event, and it's a really cool premise, and the entire comic is like so cinematic, and there have been discussions about a movie version and a TV version for over a decade at this point. Shia LaBeouf was at one point in talks to star in a movie version, but now FX, the network, has decided to order a pilot, and they are going to make this show. And Barry, God, do you know how to pronounce his last name? Barry Keoghan? Keegan?
I think it's Kehogan.
Okay.
That's how I say it.
Yeah, so he is from, what is he starring? He starred in Dunkirk, The Killing of a Sacred Deer, and I know him most recently from American Animals. He has been tapped to play the male lead, Yorick Brown, and Diane Lane from Justice League and Under the Tuscan Sun and tons of other things has also joined the cast. She's going to be playing a senator who is Yorick's mother. There's a ton of other people involved in this cast, including Imogen Poots from Green Room, Marin Ireland, Juliana Canfield, and Lashana Lynch, who is going to be in the upcoming Captain Marvel, who all fills out the rest of that the cast for the show. So if you guys are interested in Why the Last Man, first of all, I would highly recommend reading the comic, and then going to slashfilm.com, checking out this article, and you can read about which actor is going to play which character and all that. So let's get into our feature presentation today, and that is, Chris, you wrote this huge article called Road to Fallout, How Mission Impossible Became the Best Modern Action Franchise. I admittedly have not had a chance to read this yet. It is waiting in an open tab for me to finish my work today. I'm very excited about reading this because I love the Mission Impossible movies, and apparently you do too, because you wrote many words about them. Tell us about this article, what the gist of it is, and what you've learned revisiting all of these films.
Yeah, so it's close to 9,000 words, so I'm sorry, everyone who hates super long reads, but I hope everyone out there will give it a shot and read it. Yeah, the Mission Impossible franchise is, I honestly think, the best modern action franchise right now. I know some people might say, the Fast and the Furious movies, but I think this tops that. And yeah, so what I did was I went through every single film and I broke it down and I tried to figure out, how it became so good, and it's one of the few franchises, I think at least, that sort of learns from its mistakes. Everything that doesn't work in the previous film is sort of jettisons that or retools it to make it work again. And in many ways, the series almost like reboots itself with each new film, because the team usually changes. The guy running IMF usually changes. The only constant is Tom Cruise, until recently, where Ving Rhames has been in all the films, and now Simon Pegg is pretty much a constant presence, and now Rebecca Ferguson is turning into one too, and I hope she stays that way, because she's like the best element of this franchise, the best new addition to the franchise. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I just it's I don't know what to say, because
well, we talked on a recent episode about of this show, I think, about how we both really liked Rogue Nation, and I just revisited that movie. I have not had a chance to rewatch any of the older films in the lead up to Fallout, which is coming out very soon, later this month. But rewatching those, did you, I guess, aside from Rogue Nation, did anything surprise you about rewatching these movies that maybe you'd forgotten about, or did any particular entry do anything particularly well that you had forgotten that it maybe like executed at a high level?
Yeah, so Mission Impossible 2 has the reputation for being the worst in the series, and while I'd agree with that because it is the lesser of all the films, Rewatching it for this made me realize it's a lot better than I thought it would be. It still has a lot of problems. The villain is incredibly boring. Almost all the characters are kind of dull, but Tandy Newton is phenomenal in this movie, and she and Tom Cruise actually have really good chemistry together, which I had either just not noticed when I first saw it or forgotten about. But like the sexual chemistry between these two is actually really good. It's surprising. Like there's a scene where they're in this crazy car chase, and then after they get to the car chase, they make out, and it was surprisingly sexy. I was like, I had forgotten this franchise could do that.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it's hard for Tom Cruise to have that chemistry with female leads. It's like for movies like The Mummy and stuff, it's like Hollywood throws these random women at him, and it almost never works. But that's a good point. I do remember that working really well in that movie.
It's true, yeah. I feel like Tom Cruise. I like Tom Cruise. I think he's a good actor at what he does, but I agree that he does often not have great chemistry with his female leads, and he has it with Tandy Newton, and he has it with Rebecca Ferguson. And a big thing that makes that work, and it's the same thing with Emily Blunt in Edge of Tomorrow, is that those characters aren't female. They're not love interests for him. They're just like co-leads, and I feel like that's kind of like the secret that Tom Cruise learned making Edge of Tomorrow, because they could have made Rebecca Ferguson's character his love interest in Rogue Nation, but they didn't. Mm-hmm. And Christopher, how do you say his name? McQuarrie?
McQuarrie, yeah.
Yeah, I read an interview with him where he was saying, if it hadn't been for Edge of Tomorrow and Emily Blunt's character, they would have never sort of come up with the idea of Rebecca Ferguson's character, Ilsa Foss. So they sort of learned from the chemistry Tom Cruise had in Edge of Tomorrow to, team him up with another really capable ass-kicking female lead.
That's great, and that makes me love Edge of Tomorrow even more than I already do, because both of those movies are really great, that and Rogue Nation. All right, so I guess just to wrap this up, I don't know if you do this in your article, but do you have a ranking for your preference for Mission Impossible movies?
I don't rank them because I think someone else is writing a ranking for the site, but I will give you my ranking now. It goes 5, 4, 1, 3, 2. And to be clear, I think all these movies are really good. Even, a lot of people seem to not like 3, which I find kind of strange, because 3 is a really good movie. I mean, Philip Seymour Hoffman is phenomenal in that movie. He's the best villain the franchise has ever had, because he's scary. He's that character as written is really one note, because he's just like a generic bad guy on paper, but the way Philip Seymour Hoffman plays him is so like scary and intimidating, and he just plays him as this this really evil guy, and it works so well. And that movie is really well directed. J.J. Abrams, that was his feature debut, and he stages some really great action scenes in that movie. So,
absolutely.
So,
yeah, and he was coming off of the Lost pilot, which was like a 2-hour thing. So I feel like that was a good test run for him in terms of like, telling a sustained story over that long with a huge budget, because I think the Lost pilot was like the most expensive TV pilot ever made at that time. So I guess for my ranking, I haven't really thought about this too much, but now, hearing you talk about it and just looking at some of these images without having fully read your piece, I think my ranking is 5, 3, 1, 4, 2, and that surprises me, because I wouldn't have thought that I would have put Ghost Protocol that near the bottom, but because that Burj Khalifa sequence is so outstanding. But I think that movie just has a higher high than any other movie, and I don't know if it has enough to sustain it throughout the whole thing. I think this franchise, like you're saying, it's so consistent, it's so good. Even 2, which is a movie that I really like, and I recently went to bat for on an episode of this podcast, is a movie that I would, unquestionably watch if it was on TV. I would not change the channel at all if I stumbled across this film, which I know is like many people's barometer for whether or not they find something enjoyable on a pulp level. So this franchise is fantastic. I think both of us are really looking forward to Mission Impossible Fallout, and I hope that everybody gets a chance to check out your full Road to Fallout article. You can find that and more about all the stories that we mentioned on today's show at slashfilm.com and linked in the show notes of this episode. Slash Film Daily is published every weekday, bringing you the most exciting news from the world of movies and TV, as well as deeper dives into the great features you can find at the site. You can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Google Play, Overcast, Spotify, all the popular podcast apps, and please feel free to send your feedback, questions, comments, and concerns to us at peter@slashfilm.com. Be sure to leave your name and general geographic location in case we mention your email on the air. Chris, before we go, where can people find more of your work online?
I am, of course, at slashfilm.com, and you can find me on Twitter at CEvangelista413.
I am also on slashfilm.com. You can find me on Twitter at Ben Pears. Please rate and review this podcast on iTunes. It really helps us out in terms of visibility. Tell your friends about the show. Spread the word any way you can. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.